1,000 non-binary pals. Welcome to Board Game the Game Show presents The Interview. I'm your host, Bruce. On The Interview, I'm going to interview a gaming celebrity, in this case, a game designer. And we're going to talk just like any other interview you've probably seen a whole lot of places. But at the very end, we're going to have a game where you out there can win prizes. And today, our top 2 point scorers are going to win a copy of Scooby Doo Escape the Haunted Mansion from the fine folks at the OP. I don't think that's the OP. I think you say at the OP. But I know one person who can tell me, my guest for today's show, Sen-Foong Lim. Sen, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Bruce?
You know, not bad. Not bad. We're trying this whole new run a game show in my basement thing.
And, I think it's working. I like it.
I'm getting a big kick out of it. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this, because all of the interviews, everybody we have for the interviews for Gen Can't, this is completely untested. So you just had to kind of come in on faith and say, hey, this sounds like the idea could work.
Well, you know what? I do have faith in you. Mostly because you have faith in me. Because, Bruce, our history goes back to when we met over the internet about just reviews for party games. And Party Gamecast was one of the first big supporters of one of our titles, which was But Wait, There's More. And so ever since then, Bruce and I have just kind of gotten along. So I have faith in you to do things that I think are fun and cool. And I love the look. I loved all the graphics that you were sharing online. Because to me, this is like this sort of like 40s, 50s kind of kitschy look. And I love it. So it's great.
Thank you so much for joining me. And I would like to note out there, I don't know, it says we have 8 people in the room. So we'll see how this goes. If any of you happen to publish games and you're in this space that everybody's in now, where you want to take a game and you want to like gamify an ungamifiable property that people cared about in the late 90s, early 2000s, I cannot push you strongly enough to consider But Wait, There's More. And try to get like a Ronco. I still remember my time with the company I was with. I was like, let's try to get it. Let's try to get Ronco on board and make it Ronco presents But Wait, There's More. Just such a cool game, such a cool pitching game. If you love those kind of pitching games where you are explaining an idea and trying to get the room to go with you. Just such a super cool idea of doing it as an infomercial.
Yeah, it's really funny how it captured that really well. And we're still trying to find a publisher for it, since our last publisher for the game kind of went kaput. But it's like last year. So it's been out of print for, I don't know, several years now. And even last year, Rooster Teeth, if you know who Rooster Teeth are, they do like RBYW and all sorts of stuff, content. And they did a video that had like 250,000 impressions just on this game, right? So people love it. People watch it when it's played. People have a great time playing it. So it is sad that it's kind of, not been picked up. But if you are out there and you want a game that is very simple to produce, that has like high impact for low dollars, and it's that kind of Target Walmart game, this is it. And it just didn't get there because the publisher that we had wasn't a Target Walmart publisher. So.
And I think most importantly right now, and I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more in just a moment. I'm going to show everybody how the game show part works, but I want to discuss this while we're here, is that you work with a lot of intellectual property. You work on a lot of IP stuff.
Yeah.
And if you take a look right now, and I've talked about this to anyone who will listen to me, that right now, like gamifying ungamifiable properties is the way to go. I think largely because they don't charge much to use their IP for a board game because they don't know how you're going to do it. Like, if you're going to gamify Blockbuster Video, they don't understand how you're going to... If you're going to gamify Pan Am, they're like, I don't know. If you're going to gamify Pop-Tarts, they're like, well, I don't... If you figure out a way to gamify Pop-Tarts, sure, we'll let you do it. I think, like, if you can get into that, like, Billy Mays sector... Yeah.
Because they're gonna make money no matter what you do. Like, when you get a license, you pay them. To do that, and then you hope that your game hits because you then get paid from that, and you have to pay out your licensor still. So it's a win-win-win-win-win situation for them. You're just banking on the zeitgeist appreciating the IP or the license enough to buy the product, and then hopefully your product is good, right? And that's been sort of the curse of IP related games in the past, is like they just weren't very good. But as of recent, they're getting very, very good. So thanks to a lot of designers out there who have an actual love of the IPs that we're making right now. We're in that nostalgia phase, I think, where
Oh yeah.
it's like the 30-year cycle, 40-year cycle, probably more like it. But so anything that's 30 to 40 years old is like hot right now in terms of licensing. So we'll see Masters of the Universe come out, next year from Cool Mini. We'll see, Scooby Doo from us. You'll see, all sorts of stuff that we watched when we were kids or loved when we were kids, because the people who have the disposable income right now are us, right?
Definitely.
In that 40, 50, 60-year-old range. And so the IPs that are valuable to us, like Mask, like, Back to the Future, like any of those things, like Trapper Keepers, things that you wouldn't think people were interested in. It's like, let's buy that because, or Bob Ross, right? Kenny G, these strange licenses that are hitting because they make sense to the people who are the game buying public right now. So in 10 years, it's going to be totally different IPs.
Oh, definitely.
And then the other thing that's the difference now is that game designers who grew up with those IPs are actually the game designers who grew up with those IPs. If you get my drift.
Yeah,
right?
No, absolutely.
Because
so
you
have a deep love when you're working on these things. You're not just sitting in an office told it can come in at $2.86, make it about the Powerpuff Girls. I know you don't care about the Powerpuff Girls. Figure it out.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that there aren't still those types of games out there, because there really are, and there's a lot of them. But it's more like, if you ever see like something like Dora's Checkers, it's just literally we bought the license to put on checker pieces.
Yeah.
But a game like, even something that you think is a reskin, like Monopoly Risk or something. Sorry, not Monopoly Risk. That'd be funny though. But like Warhammer 40K Risk, which I just saw Ross from the Op put on his Facebook page, and it's like, yeah, that is actually, it's a reskin of Risk. It is. But they actually put more than that into it. There's more design and development put into the IP games now, and it's not just a simple reskin. So it's it's definitely an evolved form of the old art, which is like, just slap it on something that already exists and call it a day, or make something that is a roll and move and call it a day, or a trivia game and call it a day. There's a lot of calling it a day back in the day, but that is no longer, that's not going to cut it. And besides the fact that these licenses are asking for like tens of thousands of dollars upfront, like right away, because they know the value of their license. Media is such a big thing. Like if you're going to do something with, I don't know, Avengers, like be prepared to have like a high, 5 to 6 digit, just foot in the door fee, right? To get that thing going. And then everything else, it's a higher cost in time and effort in a lot of ways, because if you're creating stuff from new, then you have to get approval on like everything. And that's no fun.
In those cases, if you're working with Disney, if you're working with Nintendo, they already expect you to be best in show in some way, shape, or form, normally sales. Like ahead of time, they're vetting you. They're not just like, oh, you're interested. They're like, now tell me about the games you've put into Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com. Like, tell me what your sales numbers look like, so I know you're ready for a Disney game.
Yeah, top tier. Because, and the other thing is because they, well, I mean, at the end of the day, they just want money. So if you can afford to spend the, say $120,000 to get the exclusive license to be the only one to make the game for this particular license for a 3-year period, they may happily take that. But most of those companies are actually very savvy about licensing, like way more savvy than we are as the consumers or as the designers or as the publishers even. Like they are so savvy, they'll like, yeah, we'll let you make a dice game, but we're also going to sell a card game license and a miniatures game license. And so it gets licensed. We call it licensing. And so that's why you'll see multiple companies have the same license. They just can't cross the streams to talk about another license. They just can't cross the streams and make similar products, but they can use the similar IP, right?
Absolutely.
So you'll see like a miniatures game that's made by Cool Mini or not for Marvel, but they don't have the license to make a card game, which is with Fantasy Flight or whatever. Or it's different, like miniatures game versus a board game with miniatures. They're technically two different licenses.
Yeah, no, I was learning that in my time, kind of
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
industry, learning that where I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And they're like, "No, no,
Oh,
no." But if your miniatures have giant heads, that is a
totally different.
different miniature than not giant heads because
Yes.
those are actually a collectible toy, not technically a miniature. So it's good. Does your miniature have a clickable base at the bottom? Oh, then you're not even a miniature either. You're
No.
a clickable base miniature, which is so much different than a miniature.
Yeah, right. Because we're talking about, if you're talking just about Marvel stuff, there's like, the Pops, there's the, Marvel Crisis Protocol, then there's the HeroClix figures, right? They're all
Yep.
3 different figurine-based games, but because the modality of the figurine is slightly different, the only one that has a real functional difference would be the clicks. And they're like patented, so it's also very different. But it's they're all how you can get Marvel characters in a game in many different ways, right?
Oh, definitely. Let's take a look at some of the comments that are coming.
Yeah.
Let me put some of these up there. Somebody noting, but wait, there's more from earlier in the conversation.
I hope
Hoping
there's
that there is more to it.
Yeah, I wish.
Although Nyabari is upset that his original copy might lose resale value.
Well, I'm very happy, Nabar, that you actually have one. So that's great because they're actually super rare.
Yeah, I happen to have one and all the expansions that were made because that's how much I loved it. So I wanted to make sure. And I ended up giving, because you guys, I remember originally when it came out, you gave me a preview copy so that I could talk about it on the show. And I ended up giving the preview copy to Blue Peg Pink Peg. So that we could cover it on Blue Peg Pink Peg about a year and a half ago. Because they were like, tell us about a game no one knows about. And I was like, this is the one I want to tell you about of all the great games that you have worked on. And I mean, they're all over the place, as Suzanne has noted over here. Let me see. That you're so versatile. It's mass market party games. It's also brain burners. It's also dexterity games, which have a place in my heart. I mean, I will always say of the catalog of things you have worked on, the ones that really hit me the hardest are going to be the party games and the dexterity games, which is probably a bit different than you're normally going to find in sort of the worlds that we're in right now here.
Yeah, so it's funny because Jay and I just went over our sales last night just because, and our biggest sellers are always the ones that get constantly republished. So I bet you if But Wait, There's More was constantly published, it would actually sell pretty well. But the junk art is definitely up within, it's like several tens of thousands of copies out there. And then the other one that does remarkably well for us is Rock Paper Wizards. So the D&D license doesn't hurt, of course, but Rock Paper Wizards is this kind of genre-breaking game where it's like it looks like a strategy game because it has Dungeons and Dragons, but it's more chaotic and party-like. So, and it has a high player count, so like 5 to 6 people can play it easily. And so it's this game that people just like. And then we have recently, because I know Bruce also likes wrestling.
I love the wrestlings.
We just did WWE, so a fully licensed product for WWE with the Rock Paper Wizards engine. So it's headlock, paper, scissors. And it's actually completely redone. So that's the other thing that a lot of people don't realize with IP games is that in the past, if you had an IP, you might just like throw something on it and take the same game and just slap different pictures on it. But nowadays, and we saw it, start with things like, Love Letter, The Hobbit, or Love Letter, Batman. It's like, it's not just Love Letter, it's Love Letter, and it actually fits the theme, which was wonderful, right? Because Love Letter by itself is a great game, but let's say you really like Batman. Well, what makes it different? Well, in Batman Love Letter, you can do X, Y, and Z, which makes you feel like, Batman or the Riddler or Joker, or whoever the characters are in there. Anyways, in WWE Headlock Paper Scissors, which is a game from WizKids, it is you're playing as like we have fully licensed characters. You want to be John Cena, you can be John Cena. If you want to, be The Rock, you can be The Rock. So there's current WWE superstars, and then there's WWE superstars from maybe more my heyday. And if somebody wanted us to make WWE superstars for the classics, we do it, but we just haven't yet. That might be an expansion.
I think that might be a license issue. I'm not sure. I think Ravensburger has the Legends.
Well, it might be, but it also depends on how the games are played and what the type of game is, and if it's exclusive.
That is also true. Let's get a couple more comments in here.
Sure.
Nyabari actually was about to point out that there used to be a morning cartoon that had dragons and maybe a dungeon. And I was going to actually use that to talk about Rock, Paper, Wizard, which, yes, No doubt about it. Sen understands the value of getting in on that old cartoon because there was nothing else with it. It was a really obscure cartoon about Dungeons and or Dragons.
There were toys.
Yeah, there were a couple toys.
They were not great toys, but there were toys. And yeah, it is one of my favorite cartoons still. I love that cartoon. Like I picture it in my head, you know, I see all the characters. Like, I mean, going back, I've watched it just recently. Again, it doesn't age great, but it also is not as bad as you might think. It's not a horrible show. There's definitely things that have aged worse.
Yeah, for that period, that is definitely a win.
Oh yeah, 100% win.
Because a lot of that stuff, you're like, oh, it's not only is it not like entertaining, it's problematic.
Right, exactly. That's what I was saying. Like I always know it's entertaining, but when I watched it through my 47-year-old lenses now, well, last year, so 46, it wasn't problematic to me at that point. I mean, Eric's always a jerk. No, sorry, not is it whoever the Cavalier is. Is that Eric?
I do not remember.
I think it's Eric.
Let's say, you know what? It sure is now. It's Eric now.
And or is Eric the Ranger?
While you are jumping over to look, I'm going to introduce everybody to the game show portion of the show. Let me put that out there.
I'm going to Google.
So while you're Googling, and we're going to talk for a couple more minutes and go into some of the new projects you're working on. I know there's a new Kickstarter you have out there. I want you to talk about that. But to everybody out in the room, in just a little while, we're going to begin the game show portion. We asked Sen altogether 20 yes or no questions. He picked the 10 that he wanted to talk about. We're going to show those to you in just a couple of minutes. On your phone, you're going to be able to ring in, deciding which answer you think Sen gave. If you're right, you're going to get points. The faster you ring in, the more points you're going to get. And at the end of our 10 questions, the top 2 point earners are going to win copies of Scooby Doo Escape the Haunted Mansion from the op. So here's how you get in. On any device you have, I would suggest something other than you're watching us on, but whatever you got. Go to crowd.live and enter the code 6FE5Q. 6FE5Q. If you've ever played any of the Jackbox games, it's going to work a lot like that. What I am going to note to you is there's always going to be a lag on YouTube from when we're saying things and when you see them on your phone. Always look at your phone once the game begins. Ring in as fast as possible with the correct answers. Good news, wrong answers do not cost you anything, but the longer you take to make a decision, the less points your answers are going to be worth. So remember, follow your phone when we begin that part of the game, because there's definitely a lag between what we're doing and when the game plays. But let's jump back over. I'll give you another second. Remember, go to crowd.live on your phone. It asks for a code. Enter in 6FE5Q. So there we go. Let me go back to this screen. So did we get his name?
Yeah, it's Eric. Hank is the Ranger.
Okay.
The other ones are easy, like Bobby and Presto and Diana and and Uni, of course, the unicorn.
I mean, that may be the only character, and I wouldn't have known the unicorn's name, but I remember that there was a unicorn. I'm just taking a look to see if there's any more. I just want to put that up because that's Suzanne giving me the endorsement of loving this game, which makes me very happy. And she promises not to play. Last night we had one Mr. Stephen Bonacore on here, and for a while we noticed Suzanne's name, and people were like, "Uh-oh, she might get in the game."
So you're like, yeah, I don't want to play against Suzanne because like.
Exactly. And Suzanne's like, I'm not going to win the prizes. Once again, also a note, and I will have Suzanne say it because even just her face in text adds more gravitas than I add at full tilt boogie. Make sure you keep your eye on your screen or device. There is a lag on YouTube, so you're going to see them come up before I talk about them, okay? So just note, so let's get back into this. So what are you because you work on so many projects. So
sure.
The things that I feel like I have a real good grasp on are sort of the ones we just talked about, which is, so you're doing the Scooby Doo game that we're giving away. We'll talk about that in just a second. Headlock, paper, scissors, which I pre-ordered so I could own, so that I can finally have Becky Lynch fight John Cena.
Right?
On the way. Yes, that was because I had heard about this. WWE doesn't want intergender fighting, and it's a big thing. Like if you're a wrestling fan, this is like a debate topic in wrestling circles.
Oh yeah.
So I heard they had to make an entire playable set of male wrestlers, of male superstars, and then an entire playable set of female superstars. And then everyone I've talked to from every step of the way, that includes Jay, that includes people over at WizKids, are like, look, we've given you enough to play either all the men or all the women. But I mean, if you mix them up, we're not in your house.
Right.
And I heard that was like a thing.
WWE is not in your house.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
yeah,
yeah, it is a stipulation on the license contract for IP, and we have all sorts of these. Like the funniest ones to me are like Godzilla. My favorite one is Godzilla can't talk ever. like I was never going to do that, but okay.
but you know what? You're really not going to do it now.
Yeah, but things that you wouldn't know are like, you know, Godzilla can't ever be depicted killing somebody.
Okay.
Right. Oh. So he can crush and like stomp on things and have a train car in his mouth and smash it. But if you ever showed like people in there, Toho would have a field day with you. Yeah, they would not like that. Because Godzilla's not evil, right? Godzilla's a force of nature.
Yes.
Right. So and so you can't show Godzilla doing certain things. Right. And there's all sorts of funny stipulations like that with licenses that like we had to go back. I didn't do it. I didn't know about this. And I wish I did because I would have written it differently. So I was the main writer for Scooby Doo, which is a super fun, family-centric game where, you know, you sit around and you solve puzzles and it's just like a Scooby Doo episode, a very long Scooby Doo episode, but it's a little Scooby Doo episode nonetheless. What's happening in the story is you're reading out the words that the character would read. It's like a choose your own adventure kind of game-ish. Well, hopefully, Peter, you'll get it by winning the game today.
That is the best way. There are 14 people in the game. I have 13. So you have a 2 in 13 shot if we just toss a die.
Right. We're not tossing a die, though. We're asking questions. With the language. So when I wrote Scooby-Doo's character, I'd write, you know, like Scooby-Doo, like row raggy and all that kind of stuff. Because that's, you kind of have to immerse yourself in. If you said, oh, no, Shaggy, you would say, this is not Scooby-Doo. No. But the thing is, there's an actual list of words of how Scooby says words. And I didn't know this. And so when Warner Brothers sent it to my editor at the op, Cammy, Cammy had to go back through and make sure Scooby was talking correctly.
So then I'm personally curious because I like Scooby-Doo myself. So can Scooby-Doo say anything? There's just a way you have to do the pronunciations? Or is it Scooby-Doo only has a list of like 200 words that are in his vocabulary and you can only mix and match those 200 words for what he has to say?
It's more of the first way.
Okay.
And it's really actually, if I remember correctly, so again, don't quote me on this because I didn't actually see the document, but I believe what Cammy told me was in my memory banks, and they're pretty good. I'm getting old, but I'm not that old yet. That what was happening is it's how the first words are said. The first word of any statement that Scooby makes has to be from a list of words.
Huh.
Because if you think about Scooby-Doo, when he says it, it's like, row, raggy, got to do this, got to do that, right? And the stuff that follows the first couple of words is pretty human.
Yeah.
It's only the first couple of words that are ever with the ruh sound. So I think that's what it was. I'm sure if he said hamburgers, it'd be hamburgers, you know. Right? So Scooby can say certain things. He just can't say all the things. And there probably is a list of stuff, you know, and part of it is just getting in the character of Scooby and saying, Scooby would never say that.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a thing I would ever imagine.
Yeah. So as a writer for Scooby, I write the stuff and then we have to Scoobify it. And say, oh yeah. And when I write it for the first time, it's like he would never say, you know, let's go in the whatever. Let's go into the kitchen. He'd say, let's go to the kitchen. He wouldn't say into, right? So we definitely cut out some words that we said, that doesn't sound like his voice. And actually, I mean, I'll tell you right now, this was my biggest crowning glory. My biggest achievement as a game designer to date is in this game. And it's not sales and it's not anything like that. And yeah, I mean, my real goal, actually, I'll tell you my real goal. My bucket list is to actually see somebody cosplay as a character I designed personally.
Nice.
That hasn't happened yet, but that's maybe because I get stuck doing other people's characters with IP work. But My biggest feather in my cap so far was when the lawyer from Warner Brothers said, "So, which episode did you guys use to make this?" And we're like, "None." What do you mean none? Oh, we wrote all that. You wrote all that? Yeah, it's out of our head. They said, "Oh, well, because it sounds exactly like an episode."
That's awesome.
Yeah, right? It was a real big, pat on our back to say that we wrote in the voice of our favorite characters, right? And we had it so down that we tricked one of their lawyers.
That is awesome. I still remember a story, because with these IPs, whenever you're working on, you're right, like no one's gonna cosplay a character you created if you're working on an IP, because you're working in somebody else's stuff. But you get a chance to kind of play around in the sandbox of a world that's a lot bigger than you that maybe influenced you. I remember I was talking at one point to Andy Looney, before all of the new games for Back to the Future, he did a Back to the Future that was Chrononauts.
Yes.
And he said, a lot of it was kind of a paint job. I really went back and watched the movies and changed the locations. He said, but I didn't have enough characters. So they let me create like 7 characters in that universe that did not exist before that game and are part of the universal canon because of having to make the game. So it's like random cousins and stuff. But he was like, just being allowed to tinker in that world that's bigger than me is just so cool to do.
Yeah, we got to, when Jesse and I made the game for The Legend of Korra, we had the teams all had names, like, the fire bats and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Wolf bats and the fire ferrets, and then all the other teams that were in there, like the porcupines and whatnot. And but the players, the individual players, like 96% of them didn't have names, so we named them all.
Oh, right? That's awesome.
And they're like, I guess it's canon now.
Yeah.
And so when possible, I'd use names of like my kids, things like that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so you might see them in there, in places. So I mean, it is really, really kind of fun being able to add to the world or even update the world. So what I did for Daphne in my day was Danger Prone Daphne, right?
Yeah.
That was what she was called, and that was the trope, and Daphne was always getting in trouble, having to get rescued. And then we see the evolution of Daphne through the years, and if you've read the latest in terms of like Scooby Apocalypse, which is a DC comic, like in the post-apocalyptic world, Daphne is like action reporter. Who like has a black belt in karate and all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And she actually does in the show at some point too, have all those things. But we were very much set in like 1960s, 70s Scooby.
Okay.
But I didn't want her characterization to be that. So when you play the game that we made for the op, you'll see that Daphne isn't the one that is always getting in trouble. She gets in trouble, but she also helps solve those problems. She doesn't have to be rescued, right? And she is the one that has one of the most useful verbs. So the game is played like a point-and-click adventure where it's verb and thing that you're interacting with.
Okay.
And so Daphne's verb is use, which is literally the most useful verb out there. So, which is very different because a lot of the times in the earlier stories, a lot of the plot rotated around Daphne getting into trouble.
Yeah.
And then the gang having to rescue her and her not being a part of her own rescue in a lot of ways. So we thought, Daphne can still get in trouble because she is sort of the, hey, let's use this thing, and then falls down a hole or whatever.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. But she is also going to solve the problems herself or be a part of solving the problems, which is not how it really was written out in the original scripts for, late 60s, early 70s Scooby Doo.
That is so cool to be able to go in there and take a look and say, like, look, there are things that are great about this property that we love. And there are things that, looking through the lens of, like 2000, but we'll say 2020 because that's the year we're in.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't work. But there's so many great things about these characters in ways that we can just turn the dial 15 or 20 degrees. It doesn't need to be a complete left turn. 15 or 20 degrees, and it looks like a thing that's coming through our time, but not so much so that it doesn't feel familiar and doesn't have all of those same hallmarks of exactly the properties that you love.
Yeah. And so I understand why people don't like, gender bent heroes or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like when, I don't know, in a comic book, when you make Iron Man a little girl who happens to be black.
Mm-hmm.
I get why some people, I love it, but I get why some people just like, that's not my Iron Man. It's like, well, okay, Iron Man is more than just Tony Stark, and Iron Man is I mean, recently, holy cow. If you're on Facebook and you like comic books, you might be getting an ad about Comixology's, or I can't remember, maybe, well, it might be Marvel directly, but Marvel's sale of Captain America's, runs of Captain America.
Yep.
And they originally just had like 3 or 4 of the newer caps on there. And the backlash was freaking like huge. Like, that's not my cap, and that's not my cap, and who are these players? They're just cosplayers, and why did you have to do this? And if it's not Bucky and not Steve, it's not Cap. And it's like, well, really, Captain America, if you ever read the comics, I'm not sure if those people are actually good, comic readers. If you read the comic of Captain America is like a mantle.
Oh,
It's an ideology that stands for something greater than the individual who wears the costume. And I'm saying that as a Canadian. I understand what Captain America is about, right? So all y'all people who are hurt by Captain America not being Steve Rogers, you might want to examine where that's coming from, because Steve Rogers himself is okay with other people being Cap. He actually handed it down several times.
Absolutely.
If you read the comics, I'm just saying, read the comics.
I love when it's a Canadian stepping in to say, "Hey, let me talk to you about your American icons."
I should put my blue
American
helmet on to be a peacekeeper. I need my blue peacekeeper helmet. We get one when we're born as a Canadian, or when we immigrate to Canada. We automatically get a blue peacekeeper helmet to put on.
Nice.
Well, I mean, somebody's got to be America's hat, right?
Absolutely. So. And thank goodness. We appreciate that you're there to do it. Without you, our head would get very cold.
I know.
So let's talk about what you're working on right now. So tell everybody, and that's what this began with, is you're in so many projects.
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
The thing I sort of asked when we began this, because we were talking ahead of time about what we want to talk about, was that, talk about things people can get. Because I know you have a lot of stuff that's fulfilling, and there's really no way anyone here could either buy it or help support it until it's finally in market. So talk to us about what people can help to support you right now on the projects you're working on.
Oh, right now, today we're on day 16? I think day 18. We might be on day 18 of our Kickstarter campaign for Junction, which is Junction Blood in the Banquet Hall, is a tabletop role-playing system game that I wrote with Banana Chan, who is a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. She lives in New Jersey and originally from Hong Kong, but then was also from Canada, around where I'm from. Okay. So we've known each other, not from that. We just know each other from online. But we've worked together for the last 2 years writing this game. And it's a tabletop role-playing game that explores the immigrant experience, Chinese immigrant experience very specifically, but the immigrant experience into Canada or America, trying to understand the ideas of classism, racism, all those things through the lens of being a multi-generational family that is just trying to survive. And you're trying to run a restaurant, particularly in this game, because that's one of the only 3 things that Chinese people were allowed to do, literally allowed to do. You could only own businesses if they were restaurants, laundromats, or convenience stores. And there's a reason for that. It's because it was emasculating. And you're going, what do you mean emasculating? Well, let me tell you, Bruce, about emasculation and the Asian culture. So if you find an Asian male that's a friend of yours that's maybe around my age, so 40s, 50s, ask them, hey, when you were looking at media growing up, who did you see portraying yourself? Well, they'll answer you like almost nobody. Like Bruce Lee died way too early type thing, because everybody else that portrays Asian males in the media is either like the geeky brain, or Long Duck Dong, who's made the butt of every joke, or very much an other, and never ever, almost ever, the leading man. And this is a very a pervasive thing in history, just from laws. There's anti-miscegenation laws, where basically what I'm saying is it can't interbreed. And so way back when, in the late 1800s, early 1900s and on, there were laws that would prevent, in Canada specifically, I know the Canadian law is much better, you couldn't own a company and hire as a Asian man Chinese man, specifically Chinese, you couldn't own a company and hire a single white woman, like a white woman that was unmarried, because the risk of you having romantic interests and dalliances were so high that, and the reason why is there's a whole lot of racist reasons behind all of this, right?
Yeah. That's
anyway.
You can usually pretty safely point to that.
Yeah, so that's what this game is about. It's about exploring those and talking about those issues within a safer framework and fighting vampires all at the same time. So Junction is a word that means stiff corpse in Chinese, and it's basically, well, Mandarin specifically. It's our version of like, it's a folklore version of like zombies / vampires. So they suck out the energy, like your chi. They come out at night. The reason why they're called hopping vampires is because they're reanimated corpses, and they had rigor mortis set in, so they can't really walk. They can jump. They can hop at you. And they're basically the resurgence of the Junction in popular culture came about in like the mid 80s, early 90s in a series of movies called Mr. Vampire. There's like 4 Mr. Vampires and then a bunch of spin-offs. And then most recently, I want to say like rigor mortis was in like 2013, 2014 was another one. And that's more horror. But the original series are very comedic with some action, like kung fu action that isn't really fighting, more acrobatic kung fu. And then comedy, a lot of comedy. And so the stories that we want to talk about are like those types of things, like racism and oppression and what it's like to be an immigrant and what it's like to be a family that is broken up by generations that actually can't talk to each other. So in my family, like I couldn't talk to my grandparents because they didn't understand English and I didn't speak the dialect that they spoke. At a competent enough level. So when they moved into our house, it's like we talked with hand signs. Like I tell this a lot. My grandfather would say, "You're good or you're the worst. Good or the worst," right? And so that's all it was. There's a very binary existence with my grandfather. But Junction is about telling those stories. So we're on Kickstarter right now. We are at around 200% funded, which is wonderful for a tabletop RPG that is by an indie company that is actually expensive. It's on the expensive side. So we had to set a very high funding goal, which is very weird for indie RPGs. Indie RPGs, like funding goal of $5,000 is usually very difficult. So people have like 4,000 times funded, and we're at 200 times funded, and it's remarkable. Like we're close to $100,000 Canadian today, so that's pretty good for an indie tabletop RPG. But our system is set up so that it's very board game like because obviously I'm involved, so it's going to have some of those elements. And it's basically like, think about like Scythe's player board in reverse. So when bad things happen to you, you cover up abilities on your boards with the cards that you got that you couldn't get rid of to cover up those abilities. So as stress happens, as you take damage from the vampires, you will be getting more stress and covering up your abilities, which are the things that help you get rid of those things. And, so it's eventually this big downhill spiral to where you feel very oppressed and very, but you might survive. And the last thing, this is actually a really poignant thing, is that every character in the game has a hope and dream that they want for either themselves or another family member. And as you make those things happen or get like one step closer to that, you get more dice in your pool. But it's also the last thing to go before you yourself turn into a vampire. So it's like this, this moment of, my hope and dream was the last thing that was keeping me alive, right? So it's a really interesting game. It is 100% the most me personal game that I've ever made. The art is by Kwanshai Moria for the cover, Stephen Wu on the inside, and a bunch of other great artists on the various cards. And the cover is really, really special. So if nothing else, just go take a look at the cover and recognize that that is the cover of an Asian game made by Asian creators, drawn by an Asian artist. And that's what it should look like. Like if you're wondering, what should a game about Asia and Asian people who aren't even in Asia, they're in Canada and America, but about like the Asian diaspora and about that kind of culture without it being appropriative look like? That is what it should look like. Why? Because we directed it. We had a creator who intimately knows the culture create it. We went back and forth on it. We hired consultants. Like this is the funny thing, right? I am an expert in being a Canadian Chinese. You know why? Because I am a Canadian Chinese person. But the thing is, I didn't live in the 1800s or the 1920s. I don't know every experience that everybody had, and neither do all my consultants. But I sure as heck was going to hire some people who had more insight than I did to certain places, to certain themes, even to the language, because I speak Mandarin, I don't speak Cantonese. And so a lot of the language that we use, even though Junction itself is a Mandarin word, the predominant, like the highly predominant culture, language, dialect that was spoken in both America and Canada, even now, isn't Mandarin. It's Cantonese, because of the majority of people that come are from those areas that speak Cantonese. And so we hired, even though Banana speaks Cantonese fluently, we hired a consultant to make sure that all the names that we use are correct, all the words that we used are correct. We hired a restaurant consultant to talk about, what foods would they have served at these times, right? And so all this stuff that we're doing to make sure we're representing our people correctly. And then some other people who might take some culture and just say, yeah, we did this, and isn't it awesome? It's like, no, maybe not. Maybe it's not as awesome as you think it is, because you just don't know and you didn't make the effort to go know. And I'm not saying that you can't create a game if you're not from that culture. I'm just saying, hey, how about ask? How about, spend some money to get somebody who knows about it, right? So if you ask a question of somebody who's an expert, maybe you should pay them, right? Like if you're asking for an expert in plumology to come and fix your toilet because they're a plumber, the same applies to somebody who's an expert in, Chinese civilization in the late 1800s. Maybe pay them too if that's what your game is about and you're asking them questions. If you're going to go do the research yourself, great, do it. Just know that sometimes that's not enough, because when we make games about culture, we are actually talking about a human lived experience, and we need to be very considerate about that. That's all.
And hopefully, even beyond the Kickstarter, even beyond the success, even this being the most you game that you've put out, maybe what you are doing is, and I certainly hope so, is you're kind of chopping down some of the weeds and you're blazing a path, and you're getting in there with a machete and saying, this is not a scary place. Just come with me. Let me show you what it's supposed to look like, and come this way. Come here. If you didn't know what it looked like and you didn't know how to do it, okay. Come here. Come with me. This is how you do it. Follow me. I'll show you.
And I'm not saying we're perfect, and I'm saying we probably made mistakes, and we probably will continue to make mistakes, but we're going to own up to them and we're going to fix them. So one thing that happened, if you've ever seen like old time movies with Chinese people in it in America, you'll see tonsure and Q, which is like the haircut where it's like cut back halfway and then the long braid in the back.
Yep.
And somebody asked, why do you have that in your game if your game takes place in like the 1920s? And it's like, so tonsure and Q became out of style around the revolution, which happened when Sun Yat-sen rebelled against the Ming Dynasty in 1911. So by 1912, mainland China, Q and tonsure were very much out of fashion. Like people would just rebel by cutting their Q off and like throwing it away. But in the diaspora, so people who didn't have communication back with the mainland, it might like have gone a little longer with people who were afraid, because actually that's why they kept them in the first place, because they were afraid if they ever went back to China that they would be executed, because it was an executable action to not have Q or tonsure if you were in China, right? So you could be executed. So anybody who is in America or Canada who may take like every 5 years take a trip back would keep their hairdo, because they were worried that if I go back, I don't want to have to be executed, because that would suck. Right? I mean, come on.
That is to say the least.
Right? And so they might have kept it for a little longer. The other thing is that, the last emperor, you know the story of the last emperor, he didn't, he didn't cut off his tonsure, well, his Q, you don't cut off your tonsure, it's already cut. He didn't cut off his Q until like 1922. So there could also be people in the story that were supporters of the dynasty. However, after we had a couple people talk to us about it, and after we thought about it, it's like, yeah, well, it is a symbol of oppression. It itself, like the Q is an actual symbol of being oppressed. Yeah, let's just get rid of it. Yeah. It doesn't matter historicity. Like I'm happy with my historicity of it, but if other people are offended by it, Just like people would cut off their toads here and Q. Let's cut that off of the game. So we got rid of it. In terms of, it was just art. And here's a note that other people won't know. We paid our artists to redo the art.
I mean, and that's important. And once again, it's another
because we value our artists.
Yeah, in the way you're making your game, you are going to end up being a leader in this, and hopefully showing people the way.
Well, it's like, so if there were revisions left, we would have asked them to revise, but they had been out of revisions for a while because we had accepted it. That's great. Let's go with that, right? And as soon as we, as the company, say that, and I'm not even the publisher, I'm just the designer, but I'm saying we as Wet Ink and Game and a Curry, who are co-publishing, as soon as we decided and put our stamp on it, that, that's a good piece of art, they're done revisions. They don't have to do any revisions. And if we come back later and say, hey, could you change that thing? Some of them were saying, it'll take no time at all. That's fine. And some of them were saying like, hey, it's that's a whole layer that I have to redo. It's like, fine, bill us, tell us how many hours, we'll pay you your rate because we made the mistake.
Of course.
Or even if we didn't call it a mistake, because it's not technically really a mistake. If we want to make the change, we pay for that change, right? And exactly. I saw what Game Trade Media just said that, it's not quintessential to the game. So, boop, gone, right? It's easy to cut those things. But some people choose really weird hills to die on, right? So, I don't know.
Too true. And now we're about to give you out there a chance to pick some mistakes that you can make. We're about to begin the interview game portion of what we do. Once again, I'm going to remind you, if you're out there and you want to play, go on any browser-based device that you have that includes a computer you're on. Go to crowd.live, enter the code 6FE5Q. 6FE5Q. Once again, we have sent 20 questions technically. You pick the 10 you wanted to answer. These are all 50-50s. Please make sure you stare at your phone. The phone is the ultimate referee and scorekeeper. That is where you need to be putting your attention while we do this. We are about to begin. Are you ready, Sen?
100%.
Very good. Let me get this thing in order and start this up. It should tell me there is a countdown. Are you ready? Yes. 10, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here is your first question we asked Sen. Luck game or strategy game? This should be easy to you. We did this so everyone has points on the board. This is to make sure your phones are working, folks. Don't let me guide you, but we made this one pretty easy. There's a reason we started with this one. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna show you how the crowd answered. 14% of the crowd guessed luck games. 86% guessed strategy games. Which is it?
It's strategy games.
Of course it's strategy games. Let's take a look at the leaderboard right now. Leading the pack is Chris F with 100 points. You get that? That is the maximum amount of points you can have. Screen cap this and frame it. It gets no better. Nayabari with 98. Peter with 97. 96s, 93s. We did everything we could to start off as simple as possible so you could just get some points on the board. I'm sorry, Mad Bana and Game Trade. There's a lot of game left. It's a 10-question game.
It's fun. So a lot of these. Do you get more points if you answer quicker?
The faster you answer, the more points it's worth.
All right.
And you never lose points. So if you make a bad guess, you can pick it up on the next one. But the faster, the better. Going. As we go into question number 2. Snoopy or Scooby Doo? You picked 2 of these where I really feel like they're just to get everybody in the game. Once again, I don't want to tell you how to answer. You answer however you want. But we did spend 17 minutes talking about rewriting a Scooby Doo episode and how proud you were that you had written an entirely original Scooby Doo episode. So once again, let me tell you how to play out there. Let's take a look. This should be one person still holdout guessing Snoopy. 92-8. I'm just going to jump in and say it's Scooby Doo. We did the prize today from the fine folks at the Op is Scooby Doo Escape from the Haunted Mansion, which Sen wrote.
Something people don't know is that I've seen every single episode of Scooby Doo ever. Like ever. I mean, like anything that is Scooby Doo, I've actually consumed, except for the latest movie. That's the last thing I have to see.
The chewables, the dog biscuits, everything.
I've eaten all of those.
Yeah, eaten everything. Chris F leading with 197. Alex B at 196. Nayabari at 193. The fight for the top is strong. I'm also going to warn you, folks, it's a lot of pick one of these 2 characters. You're going to see a lot of that in here. Question number 3. The Rock or Stone Cold? We talked earlier about headlock, paper, scissors. 2 absolute icons of professional wrestling in a period? The Rock or Stone Cold? Sen, there's 3 seconds left on the clock, so talk to us. Let's take a look and see how everybody answered. 86% guessed The Rock, 14% guessed Stone Cold. So talk to me. Who is it and why?
It's The Rock.
Oh. Let's go there. It is, in fact, The Rock. Any particular reason?
Oh, The Rock's Canadian, if you didn't know.
I did not know that.
That's the
I had no idea.
Yeah, The Rock played for the CFL, for the Canadian Football League.
He was a Montreal Alouette, wasn't he?
No, I thought he was out in Saskatchewan.
The Rough Riders?
Anyway, I think so. I can't remember, but I just I've known about The Rock for years and years and years because he's always been Dwayne.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not a football fan, but I've heard about him forever. So there you go.
Wow.
But I also keep going.
Oh no, Alex B still leading the pack with 295. That is missing 5 points in 3 questions. That is a heck of a turnout.
I was also going to say
winning our second copy, and Nayabari 1 point away. Cursed with just 2 points away in 4th place.
I was just also going to say that I have recently watched every single Fast and the Furious movie as well for a game that I'm making. So
nice. So then
not Fast and the Furious, but
you got a scoop. You got a scoop of things coming out from somewhere, somehow about the Fast and the Furious, which makes me very happy. We're going to move on to question number 4. Super strength or super speed? We've done a little bit of talk about heroes here, about superheroes. Which would you pick, super strength or super speed? Those are your 2 options. You can guess out there. Ring in on your phones. Let us know what you think. Let's see how the crowd answered. 29% goes super strength, 71% goes super speed. What is the answer?
Super speed.
Super speed, so more like the Flash and Quicksilver.
More like the Flash than Quicksilver. Yeah, I quite like the Flash, but I also think that speed is just more useful.
I can't disagree with you, and I have to say, I'll take just a brief moment because I don't know if you've seen the X-Men movies.
Yeah,
but the use that Quicksilver had of the way they reflected time by using where he's walking around and it's like Jim Croce's Time in a Bottle, or I actually liked it a lot more just because I'm an 80s kid when they did it with the Eurythmics in the second movie, where it was the exact same scene again, but it was the Eurythmics song instead of Jim Croce's Time in a Bottle. But just a super cool way to show speed. And I agree, could potentially be significantly more helpful and with less caveats. Because these are when you have to do if I'm super strong, does that mean I have normal bones? Are my bones going to break and I'm just a strong guy?
Well, I mean, super speed, there are also other problems. Like, can I breathe running that fast? Do my eyes, get, impacted by the speed that I'm running at? All those
As
things.
a note, just a couple quick, Scrappy Doo is never the answer to anything.
You are true. Scrappy Doo is, not, no Scrappy Doo ever.
No. And then someone, Nayabari says he does believe it is the Rough Riders.
I think it is. I could look it up, but I think it is.
And then, another note from Game Trade Media. I love that Quicksilver. I love both Quicksilver scenes. I don't even know if I like the rest of those X-Men movies, but I will watch just those Quicksilver scenes just alone by themselves and just smile the whole way through.
Well, they're brilliantly done. They're to me, they're very much like the Matrix scene with the helicopter and the bullets.
Yeah.
The
definitely.
Bullets are falling from the bottom up scene of the helicopter. That is a piece of cinematic just marvel.
And I know super speed means you can eat anything.
Oh, I like that.
It all.
I like that. That's true.
Let's go on to question number 5. Let's take a look. Batman or Superman? We did talk about some opinions here, but I mean, what are you going to do? 2 of the greatest DC heroes, arguably 2 of the greatest heroes. And if I remember correctly, I saw something many years ago where they talked about the ubiquity of symbols, especially of corporate symbols. And that number 1 was Coca-Cola. And number 3 was McDonald's. And around McDonald's was Superman and Batman as far as universally across the entire world recognized. Which is I've just always found kind of crazy because I don't know for you, but for me, they feel like personal symbols. But then you think about it, they're, multi-global, supranational kind of things.
Oh, they are ubiquitous.
Let's take a look. Batman leading 71-29 on this one. Superman or Batman?
Batman. Yeah.
This is the part where that's supposed to come up and note Batman. There we go. Batman, the correct answer on that one. 10 of you getting that one right. Let's take a look. Is Alex a person you know?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. I just thought I would check because Alex, there's only 500 points to be had, and Alex has 492 of them,
I'm
which
just
is
really
very
easy to
difficult in
read,
this game.
maybe. I guess I'm really easy to read. But I've never enjoyed Superman until like modern incarnations,
Okay.
where he's fallible, right? Like I
Absolutely.
loved Straczynski's run of where he just walks across America.
hmm
That was brilliant, right? I love that. And whereas Batman has always been an everyman, and I'm more of a gritty street level superhero kind of person. I
Okay.
don't like cosmic, like Guardians of the Galaxy and Thanos don't actually excite me. But
Okay.
like the prospect of Moon Knight excites me incredibly, right? So I like that kind of level of hero.
Looking at sort of the visual media, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, what were your feelings on Daredevil?
Oh, the show?
Yeah.
Well, other than the whole Asian part of it,
I was actually going to say, like, there are problematic parts we're going to have to, like, just the portrayal of that character as sort of a street level crime fighter that deals with street level crime.
Yeah. So I love Daredevil. I've always loved Daredevil. Several of my favorite creators, like Mac and all the rest of them, have worked on Daredevil, and I've always embraced Daredevil a lot. I think the problematic stuff about what's happening that's coming out, that about Loeb being a bit of a jerk towards Asian people.
Oh, that I hadn't even heard that stuff. I was just thinking about. Oh yeah. Oh well, then I'm sorry I brought that up.
Okay.
I hadn't heard
it's not a problem. It's something that's a thing we deal with, and we'll deal with it again, and we'll deal with it some more. But Daredevil as a character, to me, I think part of it is because that's almost attainable, right? That's almost something that a human could do and be, and that fascinates me. Batman fascinates me as a psychology professor. That stuff fascinates me. Whereas being like this, invulnerable superhuman from another planet, that doesn't turn my crank at all.
Fair.
There are definitely issues with Superman in terms of Superman psychology and stuff that I could get into, but it's a different thing, and I don't think it affects as many people as the psychology behind, Batman and vigilanteism, Green Arrow, even that kind of stuff on a regular day-to-day basis. Yeah. So I see art as a reflection of us as a society, and definitely Superman was put up at a time when that segment of society, particularly Jewish people, needed a hero. And it served its purpose. I don't know if Superman's never been relevant to me. That's the issue.
And I don't think has been in a lot of years, and is a very I have this conversation a lot with people, the difference between Batman and Superman. Although for me, I think I like Batman's rogues gallery so much more than I like Batman.
Oh, and that's the other thing too. Right?
They're all like theater nerds, like they're evil theater nerds, and I love that about it. Like, why just hurt people if we can hurt people in a parade? Like, there's something about that very much appeals to the part of me that also likes pro wrestling.
Yes, right. And I think like any good hero is defined by their rogues gallery, and Flash has a better rogues gallery than Superman. And Batman has a better rogues gallery than Superman. And it is that you are defined by your villains as a hero. And once you have no villains, what defines you? And that's the problem with, characters like Superman that really can just beat anybody because they're Superman. And it's also a problem with characters like Batman, because, did Batman create these problems, and does he continue to perpetuate these problems just by simply existing? That is a very, moral question that comics journalism asks, and academics ask all the time, right? So,
indeed. And now we have a significantly less pertinent and useful question we're going to ask. We're going to ask question number 6: King Kong or Godzilla? King Kong or Godzilla? You picked a lot of the pick a character ones. I actually was saying this, like I was sitting there making the notes. I was like, I didn't realize I had handed you this many pick a character questions.
Yeah, or ones that were particularly relevant to what I do.
Well, and that was, I think, how you ended up with so many was I was like, oh, these are things he either has worked on or has been adjacent to. So let's put them out there.
Like,
but once I saw them all in one place, I was like, oh, goodness. Let's see what everybody thinks. 100%. The first time. I want to note out there, folks, Not luck versus strategy. No. We had to think about that. Not Snoopy versus Scooby Doo. No, there might be, who knows. 100% on Godzilla. So tell him, what is your answer to this?
Godzilla.
Godzilla, yes.
So I grew up watching Godzilla movies, right? Of course, being Asian and all that. Godzilla has a very, very, very near and dear place in my heart as just an intellectual property, but also it's something that. So I don't know if you've ever studied like storytelling arcs. You're a storyteller, so I don't know if you know a lot about that. But there's a very specific, like Asian storytelling is different. If you ever watch Asian cinema, Asian movies, like it's just not the same. The pacing's different, and people think it's weird and off. But the whole idea of Godzilla is super me. It's very, very Asian. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff about that you could link back to like Shintoism and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, Godzilla is definitely like I don't collect a lot of toys anymore, but right over there, it's literally just Godzilla and Scooby Doo. That's what I got.
Oh, so. That's awesome. I'm glad we were able to ask about those for specifically that reason.
Yeah.
And even not being a part of those cultures, I've always loved Godzilla as well.
Yeah. You don't have to be part of the culture. I'm just saying why it is personally to me. It's always resonated with me as like this is, how I see the world as well in a lot of ways.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's take a look at the leaderboard real quick, because I will tell you. So you are the second episode of this proper, of the interview.
Yeah.
But I have run these trivia games with this system many times. This is probably game 100 of this. 1 point separates first, second, and third, a 1 point gap in each place. That is real tough to do in a speed game where you start at 100 and count down. Let me tell you, that is very tight. Remember, top 2 people are going to win copies of Scooby Doo Escape the Haunted Mansion from our friends at the Op. 4 more questions. Let's jump into question number 7. Get up early or stay up late. Now we're done. We're done with characters. We're talking to you about life now. We got all the characters up front. So the question is, are you more an early bird or a night owl? All answers are in. Let's see what everybody had to say. About 50, and exactly 50
wow.
on this one.
Well, actually, let's see who answered. I want to see the answers. Because there are some people who I know who they are, and they should know my answer.
So I can't show you what a specific response is from the screens that we're in. Like
I
I can show you that the room went 50-50, but I can't pull. When it's all over, I could do that, but I can't do it.
That's fine. So I am 100% a night owl. And if you follow me on social media, you'd know that because I post at 5 o'clock in the morning that I'm just going to bed.
And I found sometimes if in the rare times I have something to post directly to you, like if it happens to be early, if I stayed up all night into the morning to when I almost look like a normal person, I won't get a response from you. But like midnight 1 in the morning, like when I posted stuff about this, that was when I would start to see responses on it. So definitely stay up. Let's see how the scores look with that.
That might have shaken things up a bit. Oh, Jacob H. and Daniel.
Indeed. A fight moving up for second and third. Alex B's looking real good to take home one of the copies of Scooby Doo Escape the Haunted Mansion, but a fight for the second copy. And that fight will continue with question number 8. PlayStation or Xbox? PlayStation or Xbox? So while people are still answering, let's just kind of have a general chat. Did one of these like shape and form you as a video gamer, or was it just you were presented these two and this was your preference?
Oh no, they shaped me.
Okay. I had a feeling because for me, there's one that shaped me. And there was a reason I didn't throw Nintendo in this. Because for a lot of people, I feel like Nintendo's like, oh no, that's the one that definitely shaped me. But also, there was this other one. Yeah. Let's see how the room goes. 75-25 PlayStation. Yeah. Oh, what is it, Sen?
It's PlayStation.
It's PlayStation.
Yeah, I'm easy to read, apparently.
Say it again?
I'm easy to read, apparently.
Maybe.
A lot of it actually does come from where the games come from. So with PlayStation originally being obviously much more of a Japanese company because Sony, and the games coming much more from Japanese developers, those are the types of games that resonate with me. So, long-form JRPGs, games that feature characters that actually look like me.
Fair.
That is something. And as I was answering the questions, I was just going to say, my questions are generic Asian answers. This is awesome. Now, the funny thing is, like, my first big system purchase was probably an Xbox, but it was only because all my other friends wanted an Xbox.
Okay.
And because it at the time had the best connectivity. So because it was at the end of university and we were all moving away from each other, and we said, let's get the same system so we can play games together. And so we all got an Xbox because we knew we could play Halo together. So it was like we had to pick a game that we all liked, and we had to pick a system that would play that game, and then we had to hook them up and all this kind of stuff. And at the time, so I'm sure I had a PlayStation before that. But even before that, it was like Sega and Nintendo. And I mean, Dreamcast is a big deal to me as well. So I think anything that had really good RPGs was the thing, to be honest. And the ones on the Xbox really didn't cut it for a long, long time. And so, yeah, see, PS1 and PS2, those I had all of those systems because of the content, not the system itself, but it's what will that system hold? If you didn't get Metal Gear Solid, I wasn't buying your system, right? If you didn't have the properties that I liked, I'm not buying your system. I don't care about the tech specs. I care about the games that are played and the stories that are told in the way I personally like them to be told. So I will almost always defer to PlayStation currently, and I always have a Nintendo. There's always something Nintendo in my house, always. And then, if push comes to shove, there are definitely systems out there or games out there I'd say, I'd almost buy an Xbox for this, but I don't.
I always feel that way when whenever they show the new Forza, I'm like, I would almost buy an Xbox for that, but I'll find some. I'll Mario Kart, and it'll almost be good enough for me.
It's almost the same game. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if I can't throw a mushroom in Forza, what's even the point?
What is the point, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't see them, the cars get wrecked in full glory, what is the point?
What are we doing? Why are we even? We could do that in real life. I'm playing video games, y'all. As note, take a look at the top of the leaderboard. There have been 8 questions asked. The top of the leaderboard is 8 for 8. With 758 points and 704 points. Those would be our 2 copies of the game so far. 2 questions remaining. Here is your next one. Question number 9. Painting or sculpture? Painting or sculpture? This one I think is super interesting just as a question, because I don't think this is the kind of thing that we discuss a lot, but in board games, especially with how they are now, the differences in how you present the art and what speaks to you are such a big deal. It's why minis games are so huge, because so many people love sculpture so much. Whether they acknowledge that's why they're getting them or not, I think in a lot of cases you're buying sculpture. I know for me, a lot of board games I buy, I really just want to own paintings. I just like to own paintings that are functional for something else. Let's take a look. 75-25 on painting. So
it is painting, 100%.
And there you go. Painting. 9 of 12 people getting that right. Let's jump over the leaderboard. Niall Bari now ahead. People have missed answers. No one's perfect anymore. Niall Bari at 770. Alex B at 758. Bebop at 740. Wow. I don't see Rocksteady out there, but Bebop is really fighting to get to the top of the boards. So talk to me a little bit. Any particular reason, or is it just,
I like to paint. I just can't paint miniatures. I can't paint miniatures. I suck at miniatures, but I've taken up watercolor over the last year, so I'm not good at it, but I enjoy it. It's one of the things. So it's funny. For those people who know me really well, every hobby turns into a job for me. So anything that I'm really good at ends up making money for me. And even when I started posting my pictures so that I'm painting, people say, "Can I buy that?" And I don't want it to become that. So it's I need something that isn't necessarily a job, because I turn everything into a job. So that's a problem. Yes.
You got to have some place that's just your place to relax and unwind, and you don't think about that stuff. I completely understand. What's hard is when you sell it for a while and then you try to bring it back. I was that way with sleight of hand magic. I was like, this is the thing I do for me. And then I started to do events as a sleight of hand magician, and it ruined it for me. So if I have a piece of advice to you, no matter how great your art is, either give it away.
Yeah, I might just give it away.
Don't sell it. We're about to head into our 10th and final question. This one for the copies of Scooby Doo, folks. Brace yourselves at the very top. This is a legit fight for you. Final question of the game. MP3 or vinyl? MP3 or vinyl? And I think this one's super interesting. I always give everyone that's on the show, like I said, a free choice of 20 questions, and I don't force any questions on anyone, but I really wanted you to answer this one.
Okay.
One person has just decided running the ball out of bounds. 8-track. Just straight up 8-track. Here we go. So let's see how everybody voted. Almost down the middle. 42-58 MP3 versus vinyl. So what is it, Sen? It is a record right there, because one thing to learn about Sen is Sen does DJ, and if you're up at the right hours, you can see it happen.
I haven't done it. I haven't done it much lately, to be honest, but yeah.
So then I have a question for you, because you are a straight up turntables and a microphone DJ.
Yes.
So if you talk to a lot of the top guys, like your Jazzy Jeffs and your Q-Berts, and a lot of them are like, hey, I love the value of vinyl, like, and the feeling of it and having like a physical thing to touch. But a lot of them use rigs now where it's essentially like 2 signal albums that are just running MP3s.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of people have said, if I'm in Paris and I've ripped up my copy of, like random album that I need a break from, it's best to just have the MP3s there. So any thoughts about that as a DJ?
As the controllers have gotten better, it's definitely much more. You can be much more creative too, to be honest, with the MP3s. I've just always loved vinyl. I have like maybe 20,000 pieces in my basement. I have a lot of vinyl.
Wow.
Yeah. If you thought I had a lot of games, I have over like maybe 1,500 games, but I have 20,000 pieces of vinyl. At least.
Dukes.
So yeah, when we have a flood, it's not a good scene in my house.
Oh my god.
And the funny thing is, like, I don't think of myself as a collector, but wow, do I ever have a lot of stuff.
I understand. And for those of you out there, 1 of you, 2 of you are going to add a brand new game to your collection.
Right.
Let's take a look at the final scores. Nyobari wins with 869, taking our first copy. Alex B almost beating it from beginning to end, but sneaking in at the very end and managing to get our second copy of Scooby Doo Escapes the Mystery Mansion. No,
something like that. Yeah.
Haunted Man. Every time I look over, and usually I've been lucky and it's scrolling by on the scroll exactly when I need to say it, and that time it missed it. Nyabari Alex B, please reach out to me on Twitter at BG The Game Show. I will get your information. We'll get those games to you. Real quick, I want to thank everybody out there for playing the game, for being a part of this. We have another game coming up tonight. It's quiz time. It's a straight-up trivia game where you can win fabulous prizes right here where we are right now at 8 p.m., and we'll be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. doing one more interview with one Elizabeth Hargrave. So I want to jump back over here. Let's get this game off the screen. The game's done what it needed to do. Sen, I can't thank you enough. With this being untested, for you taking the time and taking an hour 15 out of your day and coming by to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
You know how much I love you, so anytime, man. It's good.
I love you too, Sen. I really appreciate it. So tell all these fine people one more time. What do you want to sell them? Tell them where to go to get it.
All right. So currently, right now on Kickstarter, my tabletop RPG, Junction, Blood in the Banquet Hall, is on there for another just under 2 weeks. We've definitely funded already, so you're getting all the stuffs, and we are building more and more momentum towards making even better and greater things happen for the game. So if you like indie RPGs, if you want to learn a little bit more about the immigrant experience and the Chinese diaspora, please do go at least take a look at it. And if you don't think it's for you, but you think it might be for somebody else, just link them up. Show them, hey, you might be interested in this game, and that'll help us immensely as well. Even if they don't buy it, it's just proliferating the information. So thank you for that. Oh, and for any Kickstarter people out there who are eagerly awaiting our game, which was Kingdom Rush, it is on Vince's desk, like right now. The wet copies have come in. So wet copies are our boxes that are full of stuff, not the dry box. So it's looking good. He's prepping it. Or sorry, he's validating it all, I guess is a good word for that. He's approving it all.
There you go.
Now. So that should be done and ready to go soon. And then the game that Jay and I did, which was Mind Management, which is also based on a comic book by Matt Kint, that should be coming to you soon too. So if you backed all those things, we're hitting print on Mind Management. The print copies have come in. The test copies have come in for Kingdom Rush, and then Junction right now is currently up on Kickstarter. So that's where you can find some of my stuff. And if you like Scooby Doo as much as I like Scooby Doo, please go try the game from the Op, which is Scooby Doo: Escape from the Haunted Mansion. And the cool thing about it, by the way, is if you don't like it, it's completely resealable. Like, you can just put everything back where it started, and you can give it to somebody else who might like it better than you.
Well,
Or even if you love it, pass it on, right? Because it is a one and done type of experience, unless you want to play it maybe 5 years later. It's not something you can pick up every day and play it again and again. It's a story. But we made it specifically that it could be passed on. So
that's awesome. There you go. Sen,
Yeah.
once again, thank you so much for joining us here at Board Game, the Game Show, for the interview. Thank you so much out there for playing with me. Or if you're, that's probably not the way to phrase that, but thank you so much for playing along with the game. If you're out there, if you're watching this after, I hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you later tonight. Enjoy your Gen Cant, and I will see you at 8 o'clock tonight. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Have a great Gen Cant, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.